Welcome to another edition of Capital Preview, brought to you by Mediacom. Capital Preview discusses issues important to Iowa with our state legislature. Our guest this morning is Representative Guy Vander Linden, Republican from Oskaloosa. Guy, welcome this morning.
Thank you, Bill. Good to be here.
I'm just going to kind of jump into it a little bit and maybe have you just give a little bit of an overview of where you guys are in the legislature right now and kind of if you think we're going to get out on the 100th day, which is April 19th. Just kind of give us a quick overview of where you think things are right now.
Well, I think we have a chance of getting out on time for the first time since I've been in the legislature. We're certainly closer than we've ever been in April. We have the big numbers are set, and all we've got to do is fill in the blanks on the budget bills, and that's a good thing because those are the big ones. There's always the standings bill at the end that sometimes provides some surprises, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we will be out of here very close to on time.
My last guest was Chris Hagenow, the Republican Majority Leader, and I think the Speaker and him have done a good job of kind of managing the process this year, and it seemed like being up there a lot, it seems like there wasn't quite the rancor there has been in the past, and it seems like there's been some dust-ups, but that's what you guys do. I mean, Republican, Democrat. But I think all in all, it seems like it's been a pretty good session.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Far less really deep controversy on anything, and I think we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And certainly the leadership played a key role in that.
Yeah. I'm going to just kind of go through school board elections in November. Do you kind of want to flesh that out a little bit or kind of give some comments on it?
Yeah, I had a bill in State Government Committee, which I chair. We handle elections, among other things.
Right.
And I had a bill that would move school board elections from September to November to coincide with mayor and city council elections, municipal elections.
Right. Yep.
And the reason I wanted to do that was simply that across the state, the average turnout for school board elections is 7%. I've seen it as low as 1.4% in some fair-sized cities.
Yeah.
In municipal elections, the turnout is on average 20%. So by simply moving those school board elections to coincide with mayor and council, we triple turnout. Now, virtually every bill that we have passed in the last, 20, 25 years having to do with elections has had something to do with increasing turnout, making it more convenient, making it easier to vote, encouraging voting. None of those would have tripled turnout. So I thought this was a really good idea. It passed the House with a large majority, at least in the 70s, and it didn't get through the Senate. So we'll come back again next year and give it another try.
Yeah. Guy, how did that start anyway? How did school board elections start in September? And
I don't really know how they got to be in September. I'm sure it had something to do with the start of school and when they have to do their budgets and that sort of thing. I've heard arguments that, well, if we elect them in November, they won't have time to learn the business before they have to do budgets in January. Well, city councils, mayors, state legislators, federal legislators, presidents, everybody else manages to do it. Right. I'm confident school board members can do it too.
Right. Well, Guy, and as if I might, on a private side, I'm a mayor myself, and I could never figure out why we had elections in November and they had in September, because in a large part, the budgets that they have to oversee are every bit as big as our budgets on a municipal level. So you want to get the most people you can out to those elections.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So I 100% agree with that. Fantasy sports legislation. We know fantasy sports is a big thing here.
Turns out it is. When this came up in 2014, I had no idea that it was a big thing. And frankly, back then it really wasn't. It was pretty much a bunch of guys getting together in their basement and handing out a trophy at the end of the year and that sort of thing.
Right.
In the meantime, it has become a multi-million-dollar business. And I'm glad that we didn't take any action back in 2014. Last year, we got a bill from the Senate that's pretty much said, well, if you want to do fantasy sports, go ahead. We in the House, at least in my committee, feel that there is some discussion about whether this is a game of skill or gambling. Well, I come down on the side that it's gambling. I don't see any difference between picking a quarterback and picking a quarter horse. It's the same thing. And we're putting money down, hoping to get more back. And so anyway, we took the approach that it should be under the auspices of the Racing and Gaming Commission. They're the pros. They've done a very good job handling casino gambling in Iowa, and we have every confidence that they can handle this piece. We're going to license these people just like we do the casino guys. We're going to tax them like we do every business in Iowa. And with all of those provisions, then I don't have a problem with it. There are those who oppose any expansion of gambling in Iowa, and I understand that. But my take is, we do allow gambling. This is just simply another game.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Micro distillery, those are another big item in the country and Iowa. So why don't you kind of go through that?
That's another state government issue. We deal with alcoholic beverage control. There is a growing industry in Iowa in micro distilleries. And how do you define micro? Well, we defined it at, if you make fewer than 100,000 gallons a year, you're a micro distillery and will be part of this process. What they primarily want to do is what wineries do now, which is sell their product directly from their facility, allow sampling of it and pay for the samples. And the issue always is the vaunted three-tier system that we have in Iowa for handling alcoholic beverages, but they would go through the three-tier system. The liquor would be bottled, sent to the ABD warehouse, stamped, so forth, go back to them and sold at retail prices. So I don't understand any objections to it because we're not messing with the three-tier system. I think we are also encouraging a new industry in Iowa, and I think it's a good bill.
Yeah, it is. TIF reform, that's a complicated one because I don't think people, the general public that we're talking to right now, understand TIF. I'm not so sure the people that deal with TIF understand.
I think you're probably right.
So can you, in the most simplest common denominator, kind of go through TIF reform and what that is going to be about?
I will try to make it as simple as I can.
Yeah.
The bill simply allows that tax increment financing be limited somewhat in the extent to which cities can use it. And that would mean that now you can establish a TIF district, use the resulting revenue forever in some cases. This would limit urban renewal areas to 25 years and economic development areas to 20 years. And we would keep track of the revenue. And that really is about all there is to this bill. It's very limited, but it does put at least some limits on what has been, in some cases, frankly, overuse of TIF.
Is it going to pass, do you think?
I'll be very surprised.
If it does.
Cities hate it. The League of Cities hates it.
Right.
So it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah. Medical cannabis, that's the one that keeps on, it has a shelf life. I mean, you guys passed a bill, right?
Yep.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
And now you're trying to get the rules part of it done?
Well, this is a very controversial issue. People are very emotional about it on both sides. I am convinced that most Iowans, according to the Register's poll, 78% of Iowans want to allow medical cannabis in Iowa. How we go about that is certainly open to debate. Whether we go about that is clearly open to debate.
Right.
But I consider 78% to be more than just a majority. I think that's a mandate. So
sounds to me.
I am, we have a bill that has been significantly scaled back from what we started with. It's still very controversial. We are still discussing it in detail. I think there is a chance that that bill can survive, and I think that there is a likelihood that something, either in the form of a bill or an amendment, is going to show up on the floor of the House.
Very good. I don't think people know the other part about Representative Guy Vander Linden, and that was that you are a former Marine, but more than that, you're a former Marine One, the presidential helicopter pilot. So can you kind of go through that a little bit? I think that's an interesting story on your part. And
Sure. I am one of those who got to fly the president when I was there. I was not the president's pilot.
Right.
That belonged to my boss at the time.
Right.
But I had an opportunity to fly several times with President Reagan and then Vice President George W. Bush. Certainly a highlight of my career as a Marine, and I look back on it with great fondness. It was a wonderful job.
And they said they used to. We were talking about it, and you said that you used to go to Camp David and
Yeah.
And
When the president was in Washington, President Reagan very much enjoyed the use of Camp David, and if weather permitted, he usually went to Camp David on the weekends. And of course, we had to keep a helicopter up there in case anything happened. And those of us who were part of the crew got to stay at Camp David, and it's a nice place. It's not particularly luxurious, but
Right.
it's nice.
Yep.
The great advantage for the pilot was to get to spend the evenings with President and Mrs. Reagan, which was, I now look back on that as definitely a highlight of my life. They were
Right.
wonderful people. They were wonderful to us, and it was a pleasure to serve them.
Yeah. Not very many people, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because I think it's kind of a fascinating story. I mean, you live at Oskaloosa after spending a large part of your life out on the East Coast, and I think those are great memories. I think that's kind of a neat thing. So
Yeah, it was terrific.
yeah. The other thing I want to talk to you about a little bit, and I've been asking this more and more as a question to my guests, is kind of give an overview a little bit of the presidential election this year, and kind of a little bit of your take on it. It's been like no other. I mean, I'm 56 years old, and I've never seen a presidential election year like this one. So
I haven't either.
yeah.
If I had to guess, I would say the Republicans are going to end up at an open convention. I don't think anybody's going to get the 1237 going in. I attended the 2nd District Convention this past Saturday,
Yeah.
and the overall feeling seemed to be that Republicans should pick from the 3 who remain in the field, not, as Chairman Kaufman has said, parachute somebody in from the outside. I tend to agree with that. I think we, having gone through a primary process, would be viewed as ignoring the people if somebody who was not put before the people were to be nominated. So I expect one of the 3 who are remaining Republicans to be picked. The Democrats, I can't even hazard a guess. It looks like Hillary Clinton, but
Yeah.
she keeps losing, so
Right.
we'll see.
Right. It's an interesting, so I know we have to get out of this segment, but it's an interesting dichotomy, the fact that Cruz and Trump could end up with the same amount of delegates, and then what? Who do you choose from there? So does Kasich become, the
Could
person
be
that they pick from?
on
So
the second ballot.
Yeah.
It's pretty much wide open.
Right. All right. Well, our guest today has been Representative Guy Vander Linden from Oskaloosa. And you've been a fascinating guest. Keep up the good work up there at the State House. I know you're a hard worker and a voice of reason. We all appreciate that as Iowans. So thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Stay tuned for another episode of Capitol Preview.